Folks, welcome to yet another episode of Masterclass. And as you know, we've been choosing the topic of the season, AI. And we do this in two ways. It's me and Dorothea, my colleague, talking about where this is landing at the enterprise. But we also do the other thing. We talk to very interesting companies and up and coming leaders in this space. And one of these leaders is Peeyush Rai. Gives me great pleasure to welcome Peeyush Rai. He and I bumped into each other actually online when I saw him talk about his company, weav.ai. Weav.ai is going to start making headways. You're going to probably hear more about this company in November onwards. Peeyush is probably going to correct me on that. And if there's one liner on weav.ai or weav AI, it is going to be how to bring Gen AI in a low code form in the enterprise. Piyush, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you. Maybe you start by introducing yourself, your background, and also what you're trying to do with weav AI.
Yeah, thanks, Prashant. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you on this topic. It's something that is dear to my heart, and yeah, I mean, it's been great connecting with you. I'm sure there will be great synergies for us to continue collaborating on various initiatives around AI as time goes by. My background has been many years in tech, right? Last 10-15 years I've been primarily focusing on data and AI as my core, and I've really become passionate about that topic. In particular, after experiencing what it takes to build a production quality AI based system that adds value to the business. I think those are a lot of words, but they have real meaning behind it, because AI has been around for a long time, and it is obviously used in parts very effectively in various technologies, right? From OCR, which was also the very AI, to now self-driving cars. But the challenge has always been, in terms of the mass adoption within enterprises. It has unfortunately remained largely in the labs and in the IT groups, and primarily because fundamentally it is a complex concept. It requires expertise around understanding data, statistics, models. So it's fundamentally complex, and you require really well qualified people who have been educated and trained in that domain to work on it. And after doing that, when it goes to business, there is also the question of how can they trust the AI. And that last 10 years we have seen the trust factor being a hindrance to adoption, because business leaders or business stakeholders may not get the confidence or the trust in the model without explaining what it does, how it does. So this has been a challenge. I've suffered through that challenge for the past many years, having built these systems. And then I brought all my experience together to think about how can we make an AI system or a platform that can really take the value to the business very rapidly, as opposed to having to wait for a year or 2 years, and being able to easily explain to the business how AI can help in generating real value, whether it is increasing the top line or or reducing the bottom line, right? Um, so that was the sort of the genesis of weav AI. And weav AI is obviously a platform that has been built with low code no code principle at the core of it. And the idea being that you can focus on your data and business and not have to worry about all the underlying infrastructure that is needed to run this complex platform. So starting from data pipelines, workflows, accessing models and large language models, vector databases, and so on and so forth. So that all is abstracted, and hopefully we'll see that the ease of use of our platform will help businesses adopt AI and start getting benefits of it within a few days, as opposed to a year. Yeah.
And it's great to have you, Peeyush. Adopt is the right word. I think Gen AI has now captured everyone's imagination. So I think the difference we are seeing now is a technology. Usually, we've seen technology waves start from developers going up to the CIO and then trying to get itself adopted across the enterprise. This time, it seems to be the exact opposite. It's going from the boardroom downwards, and maybe weav.ai is one of the solutions which help in this adoption. Um, you raised two important points. You said data, you said automation, you said low code. So there is some part of the audience which might thinking, oh my God, isn't this intelligent automation? And I know it isn't, but everybody's mind is probably going to solutions like UiPath, automation anywhere. How would you explain to an audience which is used to low code
Right. Yeah.
and
Mhm.
used to seeing something like automation anyway, saying, no, this time it's different. This
Right.
is more than just automation on intelligent automation.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a pretty sort of stark difference, right? So with UiPath and Automation Anywhere, those systems are great systems. They were built to automate an existing business process, right? So the reason why it's called robotic process automation is, you know, the humans were, physically doing, executing a process, and now that has been digitized, and the digital workflow sort of goes through.
Mhm.
And that obviously, I think, from in the digital transformation era, when businesses moved from like physical data to digital data, I think that played a very, very massive role, and it helped, with the digital transformation. Uh, Infusing AI now is actually the next sort of paradigm shift. After that, and as we can all see, this is not just a paradigm shift. I call it a tectonic shift in the adoption of technology in enterprises. Um, AI, has been around for a while. I think it started last 10 years with being able to forecast, predict, right, those kind of use cases or optimization use cases. And I think they played a role, like I said, because of its complexity and the lack of trust in those models. It was not, as widely adopted yet in the enterprise as analytics is, for example, right? Um, but with the advent of generative AI, and especially with Chat GPT being available to everyone, right? Uh, the awareness, like you said, right, it's coming from boardroom down, and the reason is because you can actually experience and see Chat GPT in action as a consumer, and I think everyone has started using it, or many people have started using it to ask general questions. How do I, what do I do if I have this legal issue, or what do I do for something else as a consumer? So it has become widely available, and hence that the feel for AI has become real now. Earlier, it used to be in a model. Nobody understands what a model is except for a few people. So that's the reason why this whole urgency of adopting AI. And the adoption of AI is way beyond the robotic process automation piece, because it will help you unlock use cases, unlock insights, and areas which were not possible before. So, I'll take a few examples here. Let's say you have 10,000 contracts that your company has signed, and you want to get insights on which of those contracts which were above, let's say, $1 million, were compliant to the business policies. And if you hand over those 10,000 contracts to humans to do it, uh, it's going to take way more time and money, and you may not get absolutely accurate results, right? So that's, this is one of the cases where the generative AI would come in, and we could actually process those 10,000 contracts for compliance in a matter of a few minutes, right? And that's the kind of change that you see. It Things that were unfeasible will start becoming feasible. There are several other examples, right? People are already using generative AI to now generate personalized emails and targeted emails or content, right? But beyond the generation, right, even harnessing your existing unstructured data, which has been buried in documents or your knowledge bases or your websites, will start unlocking great amount of insight. And I think that's the key difference here. Your business decision making will become a lot more efficient. The cost, as another example would be, let's say you are a loan underwriting company. Today you spend days and weeks to process and underwrite a loan, and humans are involved, like, for 80% of the work or 90% of the work. Now with these newer technologies, it's going to flip over, and humans will always be involved, but they'll be 10% as opposed to 90%, and the 90% will be taken over by the AI technologies. And I think that will really sort of change the game for enterprises, right? Efficiency, productivity, getting insights that will help you drive strategic initiatives forward. All those are going to be big changes that are going to be enabled. So that's the difference I see between the two. Yeah.
And you're right. I think you raised two very important points: unlocking use cases and unlocking insights. And that's why you got to think about this topic this time in a different way. And this is probably that tectonic shift that you were talking about. If you look at how much can one use unstructured data to unlock exactly use cases and insights, this is creating brand new use cases, brand new uses. And now what I think you're trying to do with your firm is give this power to not just one department or one uh, deep learning scientist, one analytics department. You're trying to give this to everybody in an enterprise. And some would call this citizen development. Are you calling this citizen AI development? How are you going about this for a large enterprise?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, there are several sort of patterns one could think of, in terms of low-code software or a no-code software. I like to think about things from first principles, right? So, and that's when I started weav.ai, I didn't have this low-code, no-code thing. It wasn't even that hot at that time, right? These words became very popular over the last couple of years. But the question really is, how much abstraction can you build in your platform for it to be not too rigid, and useful for a business user so that they can use it, but also flexible. And that's where the software architecture goes, and my experience sort of comes into light. Is, can you also expose APIs and components as a part of that architecture that allow developers to then create new applications using it?
Mhm.
And I think those are the two fundamental principles that we have followed with our platform. So as a business user, you've seen a glimpse of our platform. As a business user, you can just upload your unstructured data, and you can start getting insights or value from it, like pretty much right away, without having to write any code. But also, as an enterprise, we know that you will have to integrate with your internal systems. You'll probably have a user workflow, and so for that, we have the APIs and the workflows embedded in the backend of our platform, which the developers can then use to build and customize around that, right? And so I think that's the principle we are following. And it so happens that for the business user, it will turn out to be a fairly no code platform, and for a developer, it's going to be a low code platform. As an example, when you are dealing with unstructured data and you want to search it, you have to store it in a vector DB. Of course, we can write code to do that. And in the last 10 years, everybody used to write their own sort of model training code, and this and that. So a lot of effort was wasted in just building the plumbing and reliable sort of storage and access queries, etc., for the data. We have abstracted that by just one API, saying that, okay, if you want to store your unstructured data for search, this is the API, one API, and these are the tweakable parameters, and that's it. It can happen in one or two lines of code. So for a developer, it's very easy. They don't have to worry about all the orchestration of the data, and all that stuff is taken care of. So I think that those are the two layers we are looking at. no code for the business user, intuitive user interface, right, which can be plugged in into your business processes, and then a low code one for the developers where they can start building their own applications and own workflows.
I'm hoping I can speak from our listeners and say, okay, now this must be resonating because the world we come from is a large global 2000, and you have 3,000, 4,000 applications. Some of these are the SAPs and Oracles of the world, others are custom built, and some are mainframes, right? So, in such a world, you're trying to bring Gen AI. So, maybe if we go away from weav AI to uh, how Gen AI would take off in a large enterprise. You're thinking about this waking up every day.
Yeah.
So if you could put yourself in the in the chair of, let's say, a CIO, and play a little bit of a futurist for that CIO. Say,
Right.
okay, 2 3 years down the line, what would a landscape look like, uh, which is, for want of a better word, Gen AI enabled?
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's sort of where things are going. I was right. I was at the Gartner conference a few months ago, and that's where they had started talking to the enterprises about AI adoption and Gen AI, like, and it's coming, right? So, as you said, right, it's now becoming a mandate from the board and from the CEOs down to the to each department. Um, it's still very early days, I would say. Before we get into what it would become in the next 3 years, let's delve a little bit into how we go from here to there, right? So today, I think it is clear that most of the CIOs will want to adopt this technology. Not just CIOs, even CEOs and companies, right, across the board, across all departments. So there is going to be a lot of pressure on a CIO to start adopting this and start using this. And I think for the next 1 year there'll be initiatives that will identify where we can use Gen AI, how we can use Gen AI, and there'll be R&D work going on, right? So I would say next 1 year or maybe even 2 years, that's going to be the a situation where a lot of experimentation and prototypes, POCs will happen, right? And then I think things will settle down, saying that okay, these are the 10 areas where in my company I can effectively use these in production, right? Because after having tried various things, some will shine, some will say, okay, this is probably not a good use case. And by the way, AI and Gen AI may not be the best use case for every business process or every business use case. So that choice has to be made by the CIOs and the leaders, saying that this is where we would really see value and this is where we will not see too much value, right? And so that would be one of the decision points over the next 1 or 2 years that they have to make. um, and then let's say 3 years down the line, where I see the situation is, I would say in every aspect of the business, in some areas there'll be the use and dependency on Gen AI technologies or AI technologies will be ingrained, just like today we take for granted SaaS applications or workflows or databases, or in some cases the traditional AI models. That thing will become an ingrained component of your business process or your workflow. And in my opinion, it's not going to be everything for everyone, right? I would say that within each department, so let's take a few examples. Let's take the simplest one, HR, for example, right? HR typically uses the least amount of tech, but I see a great opportunity here with Gen AI, where recruiting and hiring using better filtering of resumes using generative AI technologies or large language models can become a lot more efficient and precise. You can also have more employee engagement by empowering them to access your enterprise content, right, using natural language. Today you have some search capabilities, but they are all sort of old fashioned keyword search type of things, right? So this is just within your HR department. Then you have your sales and marketing, where you're trying to reach out customers. So personalized emails and personalized outreach to those customers, or generating marketing content ads using generative AI, right? That will happen. You and I talked about, Prashant, contracts and
Yeah.
compliance. So looking at compliance is one thing, but also taking that forward and being able to generate a compliant contract with best practices is another thing. So there'll be, these are just a few examples. Then you'll have your core operational divisions where you might be processing an order or an application, and obviously you have your structured data which is being handled by the workflow, but in most of these cases there is also unstructured data where you can actually apply generative AI technologies. So I would say it's going to get ingrained in pretty much all areas of your business, but how do you use it and for which use cases you use it is the decision that the CIOs will have to make, and the business leaders, stakeholders will have to make to make it. And I also feel that for a reasonable period of time, I would say next 5 years, the generative AI technologies will be assisting humans as opposed to taking over from humans,
Yeah.
right? Even the complete takeover will take significant amount of time if it happens, but there will be more assistive technologies, and that's why you hear the word co-pilot a lot, right? Our even at weav.ai, we are sort of branding our products as co-pilots because truly they are co-pilots. They are not there to sort of completely automate a process without human intervention, because that confidence and that final stamp of approval, but it's going to make the humans superhumans by making them 90% or 95% more powerful in terms of automation than they were before, right? So these are sort of the trends I see over the next
Yeah.
3 years. Yeah.
And I agree, Piyush. We recently completed a survey of how our clients, the Global 2000, are thinking about Gen AI, and two things came out. The first was they were focusing on what we call action verbs. So anything with generate, simulate, create, recreate, forecast, predict, judge, right? So you can
Right.
keep into this. So anything which came in terms of verbs seemed to be triggering the use cases. The second thing which came out was they were augmenting someone, not something, but someone. Like it
Right.
would augmenting an underwriter, augmenting to your point, to your example, someone who's underwriting a loan, augmenting. And I loved your example of HR, augmenting a HR person. It
Mhm.
felt like everywhere where there was knowledge work, augmented knowledge work felt like the no-brainer use case. So a lot of what we are seeing there is mostly in augmenting of knowledge work, and that's where most of the adoption at the moment is happening. The We were a little curious. We said, okay, why is there no adoption happening in the customer service part? So that's what our mind was going, and we sensed a little bit of concern. So we hear things like, no, we don't want this to affect the interface because we don't know how a hallucinated model can affect the brand if it says the wrong or right thing. So on customer service, they are a little more careful. Even there, the human is probably more in the loop. So we are hearing a lot more human in the loop.
Yeah.
Uh, so everywhere, I think where there's knowledge work or there is any enhancement of a role like customer service, seem to be where it's picking up. It's not picking up yet in product creation, product design. There are a few elements, but it felt like every industry which is, let's use a word, information intensive as
Right.
opposed to asset intensive,
Yes. Yes.
more capital markets, financial services, insurance. Felt like there was a pickup there much more than, let's say, heavy manufacturing and manufacturing goods. And
Yeah,
I,
absolutely. I think you're spot on, right? And I'll just make a comment on the customer service part. We are actually working with a couple of customers where I think the customer service domain or the function has been burnt by the previous generation of chatbots. If I were to sort of as we all have experienced, right? The previous generation chatbots were not to take anything away from the companies that built them, but the technology was not there at that time, right? I mean, the NLP technologies that existed were very narrow, so you had to keep a very narrow focus on those models. and so they were pretty much not effective to answer. But what we are seeing now with as the early adopters in customer service, and they are starting to adopt these newer technologies, it is improving and it will continue to improve because it's a lot more advanced, like we have seen. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, I think your observation, where it's information intensive use cases, and it requires a lot of human judgment and human processing. I think those are the first use cases that will see a huge value right very quickly.
Well, you raised a curious point, and you're right. I think everybody's been the victim of such chatbots. We were just very recently talking to an airline which has a chatbot handling lost baggage. So if you are a frequent flyer like I am, Peeyush, if you're a victim to one of these, the temperatures start rising. So
Right.
what happens? What would your advice be for someone who wants to avoid the mistakes of the past? I mean, if they want to leapfrog now the entire chatbot mistakes and say, okay, now this is now my first time of thinking of Gen AI, what would your advice be to someone who's designing for that, even if
Yeah,
it's early?
yeah, I think that's a great question, and the I would again not call them mistakes. It was just like I said, the the technology. Sometimes the technology is not there yet, right? And you try to use it to the extent where it starts becoming not as useful for the users, and then you have to fall back on a little bit more defensive techniques, which is what happened with chatbots. They the older chatbots just provide you with menu options basically, and then they hand it over to some agent, which obviously we none of us like it. I think we know it. But that's the fact of the state of technology that existed. uh, I would also caution that just having generative AI now, it does help in the conversational aspects. The large language models are language models. They are not information repositories. They can converse with you in English or any other language, but they have to be hooked up with a couple of things. So one thing is that they need to be hooked up to your systems so that they can access the information that is required. But to even do that, you have to first understand the intent, right? So when a user types a question or a statement on your chatbot, you need to understand what that user is trying to do, and that's not just an instantaneous intent. It could be a series of questions before. So intent detection is going to be a key thing there, right? And then integration with your existing enterprise systems, knowledge bases. uh, our second copilot, which is called the conversational copilot, is actually focusing on those two aspects. We are not building an end product, we are building those technologies so that people can build the end product using that. But I would say for leaders who are looking for technologies that are going to help them build the next generation of these assistants or agents, right? I think those are the two things: how well they integrate with the existing systems, and how well they can understand intent, and also, of course, with how well they can protect the guardrails from a security and data privacy perspective. Those are the three things I would suggest, and there are a bunch of startups that are working specifically on that. We will provide some development co-pilots for that as well. But I think that's the other advice I would give is scrap the old chatbot altogether and just start new, because there's no point in sort of carrying the dead weight of older technology when you have better things available today. And again, like I said, nothing to take away from those companies. They did a great job with the technology that they had, but it was just not there.
And completely agree, Piyush. I think we've opened a lot of topics today. We spoke about use cases and where they are showing up. Seems to be mostly in knowledge management. We spoke about how this is going towards augmenting mostly knowledge roles, knowledge-based roles. And knowledge-based roles are not only underwriter. I loved your HR example, right? There are knowledge roles everywhere, knowledge-based knowledge workers everywhere. It's more about augmentation at the moment. We also spoke about customer service and the cautions there. This is, of course, going to give us brand new topics. I know we're coming up at the top of the hour, and maybe for our next time, I would love to take us into behind the curtains of all of this, because now I'm sure, just like rest of our listeners, I'm asking myself, okay, now he started talking about language. Is it just LLMs? Are there small language, medium language models? Are there going to be foundational models being sold in the future? What happens to transfer learning? What happens when you are on the receiving side of this and you're buying this? Do you buy things? Do you buy weav AI, train it with proprietary data? What happens with proprietary data? Who owns the copyright of those algorithms? I think there's so much to unpack. Peeyush, it's been great having you, and looking forward to having you on our next episode.
Thanks, Prashant. Yeah, it's pleasure to be here, as I said, and yeah, this is a very interesting topic to discuss, and yeah, I will talk more for sure.
Perfect, Peeyush. Till the next time, yeah? Bye for now.
Yeah, bye.